Hello, I'm Keith Bragg, and for my project, I set out to show that I wanted to show that the invasion of Iraq wasn't a very good idea, and this was for several reasons. One of the first reasons is that usually when you remove a dictator, it creates a power vacuum where there's no really a leader, and then a bunch of people attempt to fill this vacuum, and it ends up filling with it could fill it with something better, but it usually fills with something worse. So that's pretty bad. And then in the second part of my project, I wanted to show that the weapons of mass destruction never existed and that they were just an excuse to invade Iraq under false pretense. So what I did is I found several sources, and they showed that inspectors never found evidence of weapons of mass destruction, and that was my project.
Hello, my name is Marilena Paz, and today I will be talking to you guys about my multi-draft project 2. This project, as we all know, was divided into 4 different parts. In the first part, we took 2 central arguments, and we either discussed those in a formal manner or an informal manner. To me, the formal writing was way more easier than an informal one because our whole academics life, we've been talking about, oh, do formal, don't use contractions. And then in an informal one, I just kind of write how I speak to a friend, and I'm allowed to use contractions, which kind of made it difficult for me. But towards the end, it was like, okay, this is easy. And the second one is the academic summary. The academic summary isn't hard if you thoroughly read your book and if you understood the book. The only difficulty I had was referring back to the author as kind of like the main person, I guess. And you just, like, when you refer to him as the author says, the author writes, because my author is the main character of the book as well. So it kind of made it a little confusing. The third part of the book was whether or not you believe the author showed bias in his writing. That one was a little hard at the beginning, but once you get a little bit of information with the professor and he tells you what bias is and the different types of bias and how to detect it, it becomes a lot more easier. You just have to make sure to show evidence for that part. And the last part wasn't too difficult. All you had to do is kind of make up a little bit of survey, and you also have to take 6 friends. You discuss the survey over with after they read your academic summary and get a little background about the book, and then they will answer whether or not they agree with the author's arguments. And then you also have to get 2 or 3 scholarly articles, and that kind of will back up or disregard the central arguments of the author. That one wasn't hard. You just had to make sure you had evidence for it and you were citing all your sources. Because if not, then that will result in a loss of points. But overall, this project wasn't too hard and it helped me better understand the book in a different way that I didn't know. And yeah, I had really a lot of fun with this project, especially with the survey part.
Part 4
Thank you.
involves to what extent I agree with the central argument made by the writer. The book I did was Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking by Susan Cain. And one of her central arguments is that introverts are underestimated in Western society, and the other is that we are moving towards a society where being an extrovert is only acceptable. What made this part interesting was being able to test the author's ideas against my own personal experiences. So I did agree with Susan Cain the majority of the time. In addition to that, having the experience of 6 peers was even better because not all my peers agreed or disagreed. So I did have both sides, I guess, the opposing side and then the side that agreed with me. So yeah, that was that. Having scholarly sources also helped because it's one thing to have an opinion, but another to have facts to back up what you're trying to say. Um, Overall, this part was better because it required more thinking. It was a little bit difficult, but the only thing I had to keep in mind was that I couldn't be biased the entire way and I had to consider both sides.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Reynosa. I'm in Professor Bookoff's English 106 class. Part 4 of the multi-draft writing project 2 is about giving your opinion of whether or not you agree with the central arguments the author made in their nonfiction book. Also, in part 4 of the assignment, you had to interview 6 people and get 2 scholarly articles. The hardest part for me was getting the 2 scholarly articles because since mine is about the invasion of China by the Japanese army, there's not many articles or books about it because many of the Japanese believe that it didn't happen. They say that it's not true that it happened, or they just don't like to put it in their history books. Neither do the Chinese because it's like a disgrace for them. And I think the interviews went really well. I just before I actually interviewed them or asked any of the questions, they did have to read the summary of the book in order to fully understand and answer the questions for that. But that's it. The only part that I had trouble with is the 2 scholarly articles, since there's not much information on the rape of Nanjing.
Part of the writing assignment was explaining 2 arguments. The first in a formal tone and the second in a non-formal tone to help us. Second part of the writing assignment was to create a summary using ideas that the author explained in the book and explaining explicitly that those are the ideas of the author and not your own. By part 3 of the writing assignment, we had to decide if the author was biased or not, and we do this by showing examples from the book, showing why he was or wasn't biased. The fourth part of the writing assignment was interviewing 6 peers and asking them their opinions and on what the argument that the author is trying to make is, and have them decide whether it's they agree with it or not, and then also taking your own point of view and opinions on the book and forming an argument against the author's argument, and also bringing in 3 scholarly sources to back up your argument.